Okay, good morning and welcome to another session of the ISM Lunch and Learn series. Today we're going to be looking at the new Sage Payroll Services, and presenting to us today is Ms. Danielle Beecher from Sage. And with that, I'm going to turn everything over to Danielle. Danielle, welcome. Thank you for giving us your time today.
Sure, thanks Sherry. So we wanted to talk about the capability of our Sage Time offering. Now this is a cloud-based offering, so nothing to manage in your local network. That also gives us a lot of input options. So I'd like to start with talking about that. Again, with it being a cloud-based or web product, it gives you the flexibility of access. So one of the first points of access, and probably the most popular, would be for the employees to clock in and out through their own workstation. So as we see here, each employee would have their own login and password and be able to clock in. With that, in fact, let's get to the clock option. Sorry about that. So Ashley would be able to clock in and be able to punch in a simple punch just like that. Now, if your employees need to allocate their time to cost centers, job names, we do have an option. This happens to be labeled location, but it can be labeled, again, what you would call a cost center, job, department. With that, even if the employee is already clocked in, they can use that job button to transfer where they are. So it would present then a list of the available cost centers. Now this list can be further customized so that that employee is only seeing the cost centers that you would want them to see. So if you have several cost centers and they would maybe only work in one or two, you could actually limit that list so they're only seeing what they may be able to transfer in and out of. So that button's smart enough to know, is that the first punch of the day or is it a transfer punch? So with that, we're going to transfer this employee. So we'll say location, we'll choose the new cost center, and now that employee is transferred. So let's take a look at what that employee would see in their timesheet. So we're going to use the login button. With that, again, the employee is able to see their punches for today. That punch transferred them out of the old cost center and into the new one. That employee is also able to see calculated detail with the second tab, where they're able to see their actual punches. They're able to see when the breaks happen. And again, our rules will label these breaks as either break or lunch correctly, so it's a lot easier even to refer back to see when someone actually took lunch. It's not just a break in the day. If an employee is missing a punch, it shows up here with a red question mark, and it does give you the option that you can allow or not allow, but that they could submit a change request. So this doesn't actually change the time for the employee, but it's an automated email that would then go to their approver so that they would be able to have the information to make the change on the managerial level. So here the employee sees, okay, there's where the hole is. I'm going to click that, and I will say, no, I left it at 4. And this is always great because if you just put in the raw number, it actually would assume that 4 p.m. would be the logical time. It fills out the format for you. So in submitting the changes, it does prompt for a message, oops, I forgot. With that request, now an email has been sent to that supervisor so that they have the information when they go to make the corrections. This also does a really good job of managing time off. So as we go up here into our account settings and into our time off menu, this system has a very robust and complex way of being able to accept, either more complicated or even very simple time off management policies. So, based on start or hire date, what rollover rules might be, and also what seniority tiers might affect what rate that employee is earning for time off. And it reflects here in the employee view where they're always able to see what is their most current available balance. It also allows them to click here to review history. So they're always able to see what it was they actually took. Here to the left is actually a leave request form. So they can, again, tap the icon to see what types of time off are available. And again, these would be your customized list. They're able to choose from the calendar either a full day or multiple days in a row. They're then able to, so we will pick a day here, and they're also able to add comments. Leaving for son's field trip. And in the top right to submit that request, again, an automated email now goes to that employee's approver. And the time off approver could be a completely different person than the timesheet approver. So that is the online employee access. So even if you use one of our other methods of input like mobile app, which we'll talk about next, or if you look at one of our time clocks, the employee still always has an online account which you can allow them to access or not. So let's talk about a couple of our other online options. So we do have a mobile option, and this can be used with either Android or Apple hardware, iPhone, iPad, tablets, Android phones. Works like an app, and where the employee would have a PIN number. Also be able to reflect any of the cost centers you may want them to allocate to. A really simple user interface where green clock in, red clock out. The mobile app can also be used to reflect, it always tracks by GPS location. So there is an admin access map that you'd be able to always be able to see where they were when they actually clocked in and clocked out. Now it's not a breadcrumb app where it's following them around all day. What it is when they make the transaction, it is pinning on a map where they were when they made the transaction. In addition, you can actually create what's called geofencing based on an address to a cost center. So when they allocate their time, you can actually have an address already programmed that you need them within a certain range of that address. So that's what's called geofencing. So they would not be able to access and punch in on the app unless they were within that range. The speed setting, actually, the location services on our cell phones already know it already knows how fast we're actually going. So by keeping a speed control, say 0 miles an hour, we know that they're not driving and trying to punch at the same time. And this, again, all the punch data does feed to Sage Time, again, pretty much twice a minute. We also do have hardware options, so I'd like to review a few of those. So I actually have 3 hardware options, 3 groups of hardware options. First being the very simple badge model. So this clock would require a network connection to in the locality where the clock exists with static IP so that our middleware can pull this clock, again, twice a minute. But it's really easy to use. You have a choice of bagstripe clock or bar or magstripe or proximity or pin entry. So again, very easy to use, very inexpensive. Our next group of clocks, these have been around forever. We do have the hand punch clocks. This would be a clock you would want to utilize if you have maybe an environment that has particle in the air, maybe a little colder or warmer than a typical room temperature. Or you're really just concerned about buddy punching. So again, an employee puts a PIN number up here on the top and then it puts their hand underneath when prompted, and it matches their hand to a template to 120 points of a previously collected basically picture of the hand. Every time the employee clocks in, it updates it. So minor changes like maybe an osteoarthritis or a swelling or shrink, cold, it gets real cold, your hand might shrink a little bit. It's picking up on those small differences instead of small changes happening over a period of time and then all of a sudden they start to reject. So it's pretty smart that way. Our third group would be our custom clocks, which is our Prodigy group, which come in 2 types, which is a badge model or a fingerprint model. So these clocks, first of all, do not require a network connection. They can have an Ethernet connection to just even a router. has its own polling software already installed. And again, the choice, and it also has another feature called schedule lockout. So schedule lockout would be if you're having an issue, or you feel you're having an issue, employees punching in too early, wasting time in the beginning or the end of the day. This actually curbs the behavior. You can set parameters around a set schedule where then the clock knows to only allow them to be able to punch in within a certain parameter before their scheduled start time or after their scheduled end time. So this curbs the behavior of the employee instead of having to explain away a lot of rounding rules. This fingerprint model works a little bit differently than some of them in that it does take also measurement of what finger is being placed, so it doesn't rely on an absolute 100% pristine fingerprint. It will take partial and it will match as best as possible, but it does require some maintenance, some soft cloth cleaning, and so we always talk to potential buyers of this clock just to give them the heads up of what the maintenance is going to be required of this clock. So those are some of our input methods for clocking in, clocking out. We are also able to track time based on just straight timesheets. So if you have a staff that you just have them put in bulk hours, this would be the timesheet that they might be able to use. Or if you'd like your exempt staff who wouldn't be punching in and out to also be able to take advantage of, say, the time off menu, we would actually assign them a bulk hours timesheet that they, again, wouldn't need to access other than asking for the time off. So again, the employee could come right in here and put in hours. You can even have time off options. And with that, be able to add just bulk hour time. So that's another way to do the timesheet. So no matter how, and you can mix those methods within a single staff. So if some are using a clock, some are using their desktop, some are using mobile, you can control again who's able to use what, but it all comes to the same place to be able to review, correct, analyze. So I'm going to log in now as Kathy. Kathy is our supervisor / admin to show you some admin access. So first we have a dashboard. So this dashboard is completely customizable. You can pick and choose what you'd like on that dashboard, what's important to you. And I can always use this home link to get back to the dashboard no matter where I am in the application. So a popular one again is like a dot board or attendance board. Who's clocked in and who isn't. Also, if I have an employee out on time off, I know this says 0.02 hours, but I can click that and I can see that someone is out for a certain amount of time. I can even add columns that might be helpful information. In this case, I added cell phone, and very easy to add columns. Also exceptions. So if you are giving a schedule to employees and you want to see who's working outside of those parameters, we can actually set definitions for you of what you consider an exception. So maybe you want to see who's coming in too early, but it's common for maybe somebody to work later. This way, again, you can keep on top of what those anomalies are that you're really trying to keep an eye out for. Always being able to isolate missing punches. So what I do is I click the icon, takes me right to the timesheet where I can fix that missing punch. Again, if I just put in raw hours, it will figure out that 4 p.m. would be the time that I meant to add there. And I can always go back to the page, and it won't let you goof. So if you make changes and you didn't save them, it does make you stop and think, do you really want to leave or do you want to save this? So I'm actually going to leave the page. Now your time off requests. This again is another window. So again, your supervisor can be made aware and keep on top of those leave requests and not let them go unforgotten. So I'm able to see what employees are asking for what days. It highlights for me in this column with a highlight and a number if someone else is even already off that day. So I can click that and I can scroll down and I can see that Ashley and John both want the same day off. So this helps me to avoid a scheduling conflict. I can always see their time off. So again, always informational icons in this application are to the left. So I can always see exactly how much time that employee has available. Again, same thing the employee was able to see. I can look at history. And the positive flag to approve and the minus flag to reject. And if I ever need to know what an icon means, I just need to wave over it. With the approval, an employee gets an approval email or a rejection email. It also does populate then to a calendar. So I'm able to see it, first of all, in an annual overview, who's off, who's going to be off. Also, I can see it more in a weekly or monthly view where I'm able to see actual names on the calendar. And if I click that, again, I'm able to see that detail again of who is actually off that day. This calendar, you can actually populate to, say, a PDF. If you wanted to, say, print it or attach it to an email. So it's a real PDF. I can also populate this to an ICS file, which would then copy to your Outlook or Outlook and Apple or Google Calendar. So that is really the dashboard. Again, some other options to add, and it's really up to your taste or what information are you looking to see immediately when you log in a time and attendance. So now I'm going to talk about some of the policies we're able to build that drive this. First of all, I want to talk about access. So the access being, if I'm allowing my employees to clock in and out either through the web or through a mobile device, I want to control, first of all, who's allowed to do it and where they're allowed to do it from. So we can actually control for the web access what IP address or range of IP addresses that they're allowed to clock in and out of. So that way I'm sure I know they're at the location I expect them to be when they're clocking in and out. They're not clocking in and out from home or from a mobile browser when I don't want to allow them to do that. And also who's allowed to use mobile and where they're allowed to use mobile from. Some of the other policies, again, we've mentioned benefit accruals and how that works practically, but the initial setup, and any of these policies, you can have multiple policies. So if there's specific situations or groups of people that need to be defined a specific way, no problem, because we actually apply these policies to the individual. So with that, again, I'm able to, even within a rule, define several different types of time off. So let's just look at our vacation setup. And I can base this on a start, a hire date, even go to a company fiscal date, any other calendar day. Maybe someone has left and come back and you give them a special policy because of what, when they came back, where you're more referring to a rehire or an original seniority date. We can implement a waiting period where we can say they need to be with the company for so long before they get this benefit, but again, don't have to wait to enter them. We can enter them on their first day. And including time earned during waiting periods, so maybe if they're earning it, but you're not granting it until after the waiting period's over. That's what that step would be for. If you allow carryover, if you allow them to roll any unused time into the new year, or you maybe even roll that into another time off type, we can do that here. Also, there are options like a use by date, or even if you may have allowed them to borrow into their next year, you can be sure that when you actually go through the rollover date, you're not losing that negative amount, that they're still truly earning it back from you. It doesn't disappear. And seniority rules are all in the same rule. So even if you give an annual application of it, or they earn it by pay period once a month, however your schedule is for how they earn time off, this then sets the rate. so that when they hit those seniority thresholds, the new rate actually kicks in. You're not having to worry about moving them to new policies just because they crossed a seniority threshold. So as this is running, it then again shows on their employee account. You're always able to get the most up-to-date balances, and that way time off's a lot more accurate. All right, our next group of policies is just an automated feature I really love, which is a holiday table. So many time and attendance systems, you have to recreate your holiday list every single year and look up the date yourself. This actually, you're able to define it once, and it finds that date for you into the future. Even the holidays like Memorial Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, that's a certain day in the month. So I can actually define this as the last Monday of May. It will find the last Monday of May for me into the next 2 years, and we'll just keep populating each year after that. So holidays that fall on an actual date, 4th of July, New Year's Day, Christmas, that could land on a weekend, you can then set weekend rules. So whatever you want that auto population to be, you can change it in that specific year if you want to, but it'll populate for you without you having to redo that list. And probably the biggest part of this, not only in implementation information, but also in practicality, is going to be your calculation rules. And again, you can have multiple sets of rules for different groups of employees, no problem. But what this controls is going to be, first of all, lunch and breaks, defining it from the punch set it sees, or deducting it if you needed to automatically. Just the fact that it's labeled properly on the timesheet, not just guessing every 30 to 50 minute break is going to break in time is going to be lunch. It actually labels it on the timesheet, so there's no problem describing that to perhaps an audit. So you can have it round so it's never short lunch. You can also have it deduct if you don't see the lunch, but we always get that from each individual company as to what their policy on lunch is. This is also where we're going to define those exceptions I mentioned earlier. That was the window on the dashboard. The exceptions are the anomalies you're looking for, either maybe punching in early, absent for the day, late, work too long of a shift, whatever you consider the anomalies that you're looking for. If ever an extra flat pay comes into play because either a cost center they worked in or a day they worked in, or a minimum shift time, if a guaranteed shift time is agreed on based on certain criteria like minimum amount worked or day of the week or cost center worked in. Also grace and rounding, so any rounding of those punches that you'd like to do, and again, we always refer you back to your state Department of Labor to get their individual regs and for you to let us know then how you'd like these rounding rules created. Going back to that holiday calendar, we can then set holiday rules here in the pay rules. So initially, not only when holiday pay is, but we can also set eligibility. So we can set eligibility based on days before or after that were worked or not worked, requirements for maybe minimum probationary period completed, perhaps minimum hours for the week worked. So we can define that so that table is only populating the holiday pay to those who should get it, not those who disqualified themselves. And you can have separate rules for someone who may work on a holiday if that's a different pay as well. Overtime, of course, so every type of overtime, either by day, by job code, anything that would put that employee's hours time and a half situation. We can even build rate tables. So we can build rate tables based on who worked, when they worked, in what cost center. So if they make a different rate based on what they do for you, we can set the table so that when they clock into that cost center, they're paid the correct rate, and then that again flows to payroll. You can also do shift premium rules. So if they get a premium pay based on, again, worked in cost center or day of the week or specific schedule, we can define that as well. So with those rules, a nice view at the end of the pay period for, say, your supervisors is going to be something like this by pay period. And there's lots of reports to run, but I think this gives a nice overview where you can see all the employees as a supervisor of, who worked when, highlights again anything that's missing, like a missing punch. Always an easy icon again to get back to that timesheet. Again, highlights where that missing information is, where I can tap on that date, complete the timesheet, and get back to the list where I started. I am actually going to leave that there. So when you've reviewed the timesheets, you can mark them as a supervisor as approved. This again lets the next level know, yes, I did my part and I reviewed my timesheets. Because the whole point then is to be able to just upload this to your payroll without having to recompile and rekey. And it does give you a final look at everything to remind you what's done and what isn't. So things like, have all my leave requests been answered? And if they haven't, it lets you know, and this is always the link to get to the data to fix it. So I have Ashley looking for a day off and it wasn't answered by the supervisor. I'm then able to approve it myself. So as an admin is always able to override a supervisor function. And then I can go back. And again, I check each subject and I could check it off to remind myself, hey, you finished that. Reviewing, again, making sure that all the timesheets have been marked as approved. Okay, and the ones that haven't shows me exactly what I need to finish. And when you're satisfied with those results, we will have that file already, the mapping already finished. So all you're doing is running the file and saving it, because then you're going to pull it up into your payroll application when you're ready for that collected time. Now I'd like to touch on also reporting. This has a whole host of reports when it comes to HR listings, employee listings, rosters, of course time and labor, where they're talking about labor allocation or actual collected time detail, detailed time hours. Also when we talk about all of everything that is done in time and attendance, whether it's an employee entry or a supervisor or admin change, everything always applies to an audit trail. So you're able to see every single change, when it happened, who did it, what was the old and new value, and who did it and what from what IP address. So every single change is tracked. Also, let's go back to, like, say, a simple hours report. Where maybe I want to see for the past even year, let's say the last quarter, I want to see certain hours. So I can use calendar range or specific from to date range, or just look at one specific pay period. Here are my calendar range options. So let's say last quarter, and I only want to see the people who actually work, so I can filter here to say greater than 0. And I can add other columns. So let's say I need more labor detail. So maybe I want to use department and location. Perhaps I need other definitions. If there's a more complex labor setup, it will all be reflected here, so you can add that into your report. When you've selected your columns and run it, you're always able to populate to, again, an Excel spreadsheet or a PDF. So there it is in Excel. And it always reminds you the filters that to get this report. So truly, any metric you are collecting, you're able to compile to a report. lay it out the way you want it to. You can also save it so you don't have to keep rerunning it, and anything you save populates here to My Saved Reports. So you can always go back to the ones that you like. You can always, even as you run them, change them while you're in them. Change the date range, change the way that it's set up. Also, with your saved reports, you can then add what's called email configuration. So with the email configuration, you're able to label it, let's say hours report, week to date hours. You want it to run at 6 a.m. every day of the week. You want it to go to your specific managers. You can pick email addresses from the system and decide not only what format it goes out in, and now it runs every single day at 6 a.m. to the specific people that you want to send it to. So if there's something you want them to see every day in their email when they come in, you absolutely can program that. So that is really a high-end overview of our time and attendance. I appreciate you watching, and please let us know if you have any additional questions.
So Meg, I see that you did join us. I'm not sure if you have audio capability, but you can always use the chat window if you have any questions.
Okay. I'm okay right now. I did come in a little late, but I'm okay right now.
You didn't miss much, Meg. We just started, really.
Yeah,
Okay.
really. We waited a few minutes. So, and I did record this option. It will be out on our YouTube. And if you'd like to see something more personalized, we can set up a discovery call and get that going for you as well. You can always just reach out to me if you need anything further.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, perfect. Well, Danielle, I want to thank you for joining us today and showing us this product. It's a great payroll product. I love the flexibility in it. And there's a lot more stuff to this recording according to the ACA requirements, et cetera, et cetera. So beautiful product. Thank you so very much for your time today. We truly appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. Just a reminder that July Lunch and Learn webinars will be going out in about a week, so keep your eye open for that. And let's not forget about Sage Summit next month, Chicago, July 25th through the 28th. Registration is still open, so if you're interested, reach out to us. We can help you with that. We hope to see you there. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
You too.